Brought to you by CGTN Europe.
Hello, I'm Stephen Cole. Welcome to the Agenda podcast. On this episode, we're finding out what it will take to get travel and tourism back on the move. But how soon can we pack our suitcases? What will be different about our travel experiences? And which parts of the world are now open for business? I began by speaking to Eduardo Santander, Chief Executive of the European Travel Commission, to find out.
We are pretty optimistic. We think that the summer will bring some normality to our lives and that we will be able to travel. So with some restrictions, we have to really think that this is not the end of the pandemic yet, and that we have to be very careful. But for the travel and tourism industry, the summer is the restart of our business, is the restart of this sector, which has been suffering so much in the last 18 months. We have learned a lot of lessons from last summer, 2020, where a lot of wrong things happened, and I think we all lowered our guards too early, in my opinion. And now what we see is that the industry is preparing itself with a lot of protocols, but also a lot of measures put in place by local and national authorities. What we see is that the subsector of mobility, meaning aviation, ground transportation, and many others, as well as accommodation, for instance, are pretty ready to go. So they have been repeating that for weeks, if not months already, that it's pretty safe to travel. It's not the act of traveling which makes it dangerous, or it is the behavior at departure or destination. So what we see here is maybe that the small and medium-sized enterprise, and don't forget that the European entrepreneurship is made up to 85% of small and medium-sized enterprises. Those are the ones that still need a lot of support, help from the governments, from the European Commission, and from their own.
Are they getting that support?
They are. The support is coming now, and it's coming with a really urgency from their government, as for many countries in the European Union and beyond, also for UK. The summer is so crucial for them, to survive. I mean, we're talking about survival threat for many tourism enterprises, especially the small ones. I guess the big corporations, the big companies knew from the beginning that they had to have a new setup, and they got their own resources and also a lot of state aid, to do so. But the small and medium-sized enterprise is going to be here crucial for a real recovery of tourism.
And of course, many will have suffered very badly and will have gone to the wall probably during the summer. And Britons have a love affair with Europe and love to travel there and go to Europe in huge numbers. But also China is a big tourist market, and America. How will you persuade the Chinese and the Americans to come to Europe? And persuade them that it's safe to do so?
It is indeed going to be possible. I mean, the question in when, it's difficult to answer right now. I don't have a date, but we are pretty convinced that, long-haul markets, you mentioned two of them, US and China, will be coming back to Europe by mid or late summer. What we foresee here is actually an extended summer season. So we see a summer that's going to last practically until end of October or November, with a lot of these markets coming later in the year. The European Union has announced the digital green certificate. Some people call it a vaccination passport, but it's not a passport. And it is not
what is it,
certificate then? Well, it is a proof of vaccination, a proof of a negative COVID test, and a proof of immunization, which is none of them is going to be a condition to enter any of the countries of the European Union. Meaning, if you're not vaccinated, you still can come to Europe, but you will be subjected to some other conditions. I think this tool is really the hope that we have.
It's the only hope, isn't it? Because, I mean, Europe is divided. Some countries are ahead of others in their vaccination programs. Greece says it's ready to receive some British tourists. Portugal, Croatia, Iceland, they're all better prepared. But there doesn't seem to be any unified tourism purpose or message to the world, come to Europe yet.
Well, I would not say they are better prepared. I would say they've been faster vaccinating their populations. The vast majority of the governments within the European Union will be ready by the beginning of the summer with 60 to 70% of their populations already being vaccinated, meaning that by the summer, we all be at the same place.
Is it fair to say the pandemic has acted as a sort of wake-up call for some European countries in terms of their over-reliance on tourism? And in fact, this is a wake-up call because they're worried about the effects of mass tourism. So, in fact, the message should be for more quality tourism.
That's very true. Let's, Stephen, one of the very uncomfortable truths about tourism is that it was a very margin revenue driven and very successful business, meaning that, and with an exponential growth that no other industry have seen in the last 3 decades. And nothing could stop this except in something like this. And we had the symptoms already of over tourism, or places really suffering from the consequences of having too many visitors and so on. Problems with local communities and visitors and so on. I think this period of pandemic time, has given us the possibility, to have a very deep reflection of what tourism should be in the future, and definitely should be not only more resilient, but it has to be much more sustainable, has to be much more digital. And I think that the act of traveling will become a less automatic process in our heads, but as something much more reflected.
And more considered, exactly. Eduardo Santander, many thanks to you for joining us on The Agenda.
You are very welcome.
In 2019, Greece welcomed more than 30 million tourists, and that's 3 times the country's population, contributing a full quarter of the country's GDP. And one of Europe's weaker economies simply can't afford to miss out on that kind of income. So how is the country planning to cope with what looks set to be another difficult summer? Joining me now is Angela Gerekou, president of the Greek National Tourist Organization. Angela, what's been the impact of COVID on Greek tourism?
Of course, all we know, the year 2020 has been the worst year in the history of world tourism. The sector of Greek tourism, think about it, because for Greece, we are dependent from tourism 30% of GDP. So you can imagine how damage we had from this pandemic. But in the same time, we are preparing with all our efforts to open again as soon as possible. And we have our weapons for that. We have the green certification that we are preparing now with Europe, the vaccines, we have the PCR, we have everything we need as protocols just to make our visitors to feel safe, and for our citizens as well. So even our Greek national organization is preparing a huge campaign based on a different kind of model of tourism, because we see the crisis as an opportunity as well to change the model of our tourism.
Well, that is very, very interesting, because I wondered, because the tourists had to stay away for a while, and has the pandemic offered you, the country and the tourist board, a chance to think again about how you want to present the country and what kind of tourism you want in the future?
Yes. So it was like an accelerator, COVID, for us, to remind us what we have to do. We have our beautiful sea and beautiful sun and the lighthouse we know, but it's not enough. I'm talking about sustainability. I'm talking about green destinations. Our goal is 2030, as you know, and all Europeans and the American goals as well. We wish to be, and we are working on this, to be, why not, a global center of culture and sustainable destination as country. We have to work for this very hard. We have to have strategies, specific strategies to education. We have to collaborate with very, very known and powerful organization.
Greece is ready. It's ready to welcome the world's tourists back again.
Yes.
When I arrive, What will be different about Greece when I arrive? And talk me through from passport control.
First of all, we care about your safety, okay? Safetyness. So pass control, you have to see if you have the vaccine.
How will I prove that I've had the vaccine?
With a certificate, the green passport, the certificate that the European Union now, and not only, all countries of Europe, I mean, they are prepared to be ready about this. And then if you don't have the certificate for vaccine, you must have the certificate of PCR, 72 hours maximum before you travel. And then if you already passed the COVID and you have the antisomes, you have to prove with another test before you travel that you have. So one of three of those three, you have 3 opportunities to travel.
And Greece was one of the earliest countries to welcome back tourism. So what lessons can other countries learn from Greece?
Our strategic and the preparation to be safe as much as possible. I know it's not easy this year because already we have this lockdown, we have the pandemic and the measures. I mean, they're not quite as we want, but every day is a little bit better. So we have all these tools that we can use to have this kind of security, and safetyness. So we have to be careful. Every country has to be very focused, first of health, but then you have to make our visitors to feel that they're not coming in a huge hospital. They're coming here to have, yes, they're coming here. They have their vacation, their unique experience. They have to meet all this color and philoxenia we have here, hospitality, So it's a challenge for us to give this happiness and this magic of tourism. We must maintain this, and at the same time make them feel secure.
Angela Gerekou, many thanks to you for joining us here on The Agenda.
Thank you.
Restrictions on leisure and business travel meant that there was a slump in accommodation activity of more than 50% in the EU and the UK. The situation wiped out more than $138 billion in turnover and ended a decade of growth. But is there now room for optimism in the hospitality industry? I'm joined by Sir Rocco Forte, chairman of the luxury chain Rocco Forte Hotels. Sir Rocco, how would you describe the impact of COVID on the hotel industry?
A complete and utter disaster. For my company, for example, our sales will be 12% of what they normally are. So, it's devastating. And many people in my industry have faced a similar situation because across most of continental Europe, there's been a sort of stop-go. There have been periods of opening, but there have been severe restrictions most of the time. So hotels haven't been able to function, and neither have restaurants and bars. In Italy, for example, at the present time, restaurant and bars are closed, and restaurateurs in Rome are demonstrating every day outside of the Houses of Parliament to be allowed to start earning a living again. So it's been a very, very difficult situation, and many people have not survived this.
Do you think the governments in Europe and the British government too has done enough to support the hospitality sector?
Well, it's varied across different countries. I don't think enough has been done, actually. In Britain, for example, we've had the furlough scheme, which obviously helps, but that's more helpful to the people employed than the employers themselves. There's still a cost to the employer. In Germany, the government is now giving direct grants to cover people's overhead costs for over a 6-month period, which comes which starts from November of last year through to June, the end of June of this year. And they will be substantial. I mean, my company, I have 3 hotels in Germany. We'll be receiving 12 million euros under this scheme, as well as furlough. In Italy, the situation tends to change all the time, but there has been more direct help. There's been where people are paying rents, 60% of the rents can be offset against past or future taxes. But I mean, generally, it's meant using up one's own existing financial resources and securing a lot more to take us through.
It's also changed the market for business travel, as many companies decide to cut back on corporate business travel. How will you, as a hotelier, pull back or attract not just guests, but corporate guests to your hotels?
We've got a lot of corporate group bookings from starting in August right through from then on. Companies holding group meetings and incentives. Obviously, companies have seen their travel bills cut considerably, and therefore will try and maintain them at a low level going forward. After the financial crisis, we saw a big drop in corporate travel, and it took 2 years for it to return to its normal levels. But I don't think it'll be quite as bad as that going forward now. The other thing about so-called working from home or remotely, people have now got used to being able to work with their laptop, and then they can easily go on holiday and work from holiday. So by taking their laptop with them.
You've been in the business a very long time. Have you ever seen anything like this year before?
No, because I've never imagined a situation in which my business would have no income. And what the politicians don't seem to understand is that if you don't have an income, you can't survive. And I find it very frustrating.
Is this a chance also, perhaps, for hoteliers, restaurateurs to take stock, to sit back and think, OK, we're going to change the way we present our business?
I mean, what we've done in my company is looked at how our selling and marketing organizations work. And I think as a result, we'll come out of this with a much more efficient operation, and hopefully which will be able to boost our sales as the recovery starts. We've also learned to become more flexible. I mean, hotels have had to open and close at fairly short notice. And so they've got quite practiced in dealing with these situations. So I think in future, they'll be able to adjust better to trough periods and seasonal trends that hotels will normally face.
So Rocco Forte, many thanks to you for joining us here on The Agenda. A lack of tourists and restrictions on travel have been devastating for the airline industry. It's estimated airlines lost $126 billion last year and will lose another $50 billion this year. But I'm going to talk to a man now who is an optimist. He hopes the future is rosier and more profitable. Bjorn Tore Larsen is the CEO of a brand new airline, Norse Atlantic Airways. Bjorn, out of crisis comes opportunity, I suppose. Not the best of time to launch an airline, is it?
We believe that once the pandemic is behind us, people would like to travel more than they did in the past. And in this environment, we have been able to secure very competitively priced aircraft, and we have been able to build a very strong and lean organization that will be fit for purpose. And we have the flexibility to start our operations when we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We also think that business travel will eventually be, if not back to where it was, we think it will come back because particularly for the long-haul flights, people still need to go and see their business associates and relations. So in sum, we think the long-haul market will be back.
How much have you been influenced by the failure of the Norwegian air shuttle? I suppose you might have got some of its aircraft, but I mean, was that a lesson in how not to run an airline, or was it just all bad timing?
I think it's probably a combination, but our model is very different than what they had. We are a focused, long cost, low. They had a few incidents of bad luck, for example, with the engines, also with the MAX, and ultimately with COVID. But our model is very different. We start off, we are debt-free. We have very competitive leasing terms for the aircraft, and we have a very flexible model. So we can manage to make money at a much lower yield than the previous contender had. We believe in a few years' time there will be a shortage of pilots again, because we believe the sort of overall flight activity will increase again up to levels we had pre-COVID and maybe beyond that.
How will NAA be different to any other airline? I mean, obviously price will be the main reason, but what else? What will make you stand out from the rest, do you think?
We have, the very fuel efficient and more environmentally friendly aircraft than the average operator. And even if we are a low-cost airline, we have no ambition to be a low-comfort airline. We are an airline that will give people choices. So we are unbundling the product, as they say, where you buy a ticket and then you can add on amenities, food, luggage, whatever you want.
So people will have to pay for all the extras as normal. There'll be a basic price, but then if you want a plane with wings, you'll pay extra. If you want a drink, you'll pay extra, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, the wings are included and the restroom as well. But the typical services you get would not necessarily be free of charge in our airline, simply because many people don't need it or they don't want it, and then we don't want them to pay for it. We want them to pay for what they actually is going to use. Our job is to ensure that all the costs are cut down so that we are a great choice for those who want to sort of build the journey themselves.
And when do you hope to start operating? In other words, do you think you'll be up and flying this summer?
So for us, we need to see that the travel restrictions have been lifted. We estimate that within the end of the year, at least the transatlantic traffic will be open for business. And our main plan is that we will be fully operational with all the aircraft from about a year from now, April next year. But if everything lifts up, we might start a soft launch in December this year with a few aircraft.
A soft launch followed by a soft landing, hopefully. Bjorn Tore Larsen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Steve.
And that brings us to the end of another edition of the Agenda podcast. Next week, we'll be looking at the future of the energy industry and whether or not the world is ready to give up fossil fuels. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher and Spotify. You can also find us on CGTN Europe, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube.
The most interesting questions.
Are there other living beings beyond Earth?
Will man or machine be in charge?
Great question.
Always have more than one answer.
Well, hold on, let me just draw up a list.
And always come from more than one person.
That's where the credibility lies.
The concept of having a machinery which is alive and evolving didn't wait for us.
The end of inequality of incomes and wealth around the world, can you imagine how difficult that is at the moment to achieve?
Every episode, Stephen Cole, Murray Beveridge, and some of the brightest minds out there shed light on the answers to some of the most intriguing questions.
There are two ways of looking at this.
Machines can't really discriminate between civilian and military targets.
The Answers Project.
Maybe we need to just look at this in a bit more detail.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
The Answers Project, a new podcast from CGTN Europe.